Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. That I want to start with a question. If you're in a relationship, do you remember how incredibly hot the beginning of your relationship was? Think back to how much desire and how much passion there was at the beginning, and have you lost a little bit of that? That is my question. Do you feel maybe a little bit bored in your relationship? If you're nodding your head, this episode is for you today, because I'm going to be giving you my top 3 tips to regain or to reignite the spark in your relationship. So before we get started, if you are new to my channel, hello, introduce yourself in the comments. We're so happy that you're here. Say hello and make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so that you get notified every time I roll out something new, which is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because I don't want you to miss a thing. If you don't know me, my name is Terri Cole. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, a relationship expert, and the author of Boundary Boss, right there, which you can get at boundarybossbook.com. I love to highlight your questions and your comments. So I want to say thank you for that, because that's what keeps this channel engaged and interesting, is you. Really, yes, I put out the content, but you guys keep it going. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to highlight a comment from Kim Curry, and that is under the episode, How to Soothe an Anxious Heart with Ricky Cluse. So she says, "Hi, Terri. I had to stop your video for a second before I watch more to tell you that I had the exact same response when I saw you for the first time. I thought, who is this person? I love how she communicates. You and your content are incredibly valuable and fascinating to me, and I've learned so much from you. Thank you for creating your channel and for writing Boundary Boss. Now I will continue to watch this interview." Well, thank you so much, Kim. I'm glad you got inspired and motivated to stop right then and there to drop that comment. I appreciate you being here. All right, let's move into today's content. The benefits, right, of having a passionate, long-lasting, inspired love relationship. There's so many benefits in that for you and for the other person. It just makes life better, right? When you are inspired and feel passionate in the relationship that you're in. And yet, why do we lose that? Why do we lose the spark? What happens? Well, life happens. A pandemic happens. Being locked down happens. I mean, all of the things that we've experienced. But even if we hadn't had those major peak experiences, life is long. And we go through different phases in long-term relationships where in the beginning, when it's just the two of you, there's a lot more time and energy. And we're still in that pink cloud of being in love and just making plans, just us. I mean, I didn't really have that because I married a widower with 3 kids, but a lot of people, it's just the two of you. Then if you decide that you're going to have kids, you go into the next phase of now it's not just the two of you. And running a household and raising a family can really take its toll. Big careers can take their toll on a relationship, because what ends up happening is we end up taking our person for granted. It's very easy to just expect that they'll always be there. And it's almost like we no longer feel like we need to be on our best behavior. And I'm not saying we need to be uncomfortable or we need to treat our person like they're a stranger. That's not what I mean. But consideration sometimes can fall by the wayside when you're in a long-term relationship. So part of the process of getting the spark back is you have to carve out time to be intimate. And when I say to be intimate, yes, I mean be sexual, be sensual, but it's more than that. It's quality time. It's having an actual conversation without screens in your face. It's going out of your way to make a plan to do something that you know your partner would love to do or they've been asking you to do. There's so many ways of being loving and intimate that don't have to involve sexual activity. When I used to counsel couples back in the day, there would be a lot of complaints, and a lot of times, not always, and this is not to generalize, this is just what my experience was. A lot of times the women would say they wanted more support with the kids, with the home. They wanted more consideration from their partner. They felt like there was an imbalance in who was doing what. And a lot of times the men would want more sex. What I ultimately was able to do was help the men see that it's all connected. There can't be a separation from how we treat each other day to day, and then how inspired someone feels sexually. At least not for the women in my practice. There was an absolute connection when they felt considered, when they felt thought of, when their partner was being kind, thinking of them, making their life easier without them having to ask them. They felt much more sexually attracted to their partner and much more wanting to be sexual and to be intimate. And resentment is such an intimacy killer. It's such a passion killer that it's very difficult to be sexual when you're feeling really resentful. At least I know this was true for the women in my practice, which is predominantly what I had in my practice with cis women. So I'm talking sort of from that point of view, but I think it's true for anyone, any person, any orientation, any gender identification, that if you feel unimportant or resentful, that is not going to make you want to fool around with someone. I don't think. It's just my 2 cents on the matter. So make time for intimacy and connection and think of different ways that you can nurture the passion in the relationship sexually and in non-sexual ways. That's my first thought about what you can do. And what else can you do? The second thing is to think about romance, because this is the thing. Sometimes we'll continue having sex, but it's the romance that's missing, because a lot of times people are dutiful. They're checking a box. They're like, okay, we need to have sex. We haven't had sex in a week. We need to have sex. We're just going to do it. That's not the same as romance, right? These are 2 incredibly different things. So I want you to think about right now, what are some romantic gestures, sweet things that you can do or that you would like your partner to do or that you guys can talk about doing on a regular basis for each other to sort of up the passion and the romance level in the relationship. Sometimes it can be sending a sexy text. Sometimes it can be leaving a note. Sometimes it can be just spontaneously grabbing your partner and making out with them in the kitchen, like if you don't have a bunch of other people around, But think about what are the ways that you can reignite the passion in the relationship, and think about how uninhibited you were doing that in the beginning. Or maybe you were less inhibited because most of the time we were less encumbered with other responsibilities. And keep in mind, you guys, with sex, intimacy, romance, connection, probably the most important piece, which is the third tip, is about communication. That we have to communicate openly and honestly. When I first was going through menopause, because I kind of went through it early and I had perimenopause, I went through a period of time where sex became painful, and I swear it felt like it went from one day feeling great to the next day actually hurting. And I didn't say anything to Vic about it because I thought maybe it's me. I was not aware at that point. This is before I had seen doctors about perimenopause and menopause. Like, I didn't know what was going on. I swear, I really feel like I need to write a book on menopause called Meno Marathon, because it feels like there's no pause and it goes on for like a friggin' decade, but whatever. It's, there are ways that we can manage it, but I felt really ill-equipped. I did not understand. When I thought about menopause, I thought, oh, people get hot flashes, right? Isn't that what that's about? And some people complain about gaining weight. I had never heard that sex can become painful or that it was going to interrupt my sleep. Yes, the weight gain part I got, but then I had crazy insomnia that I'd never had in my life. Now, you can imagine both of those things certainly impacted my desire to be sexual. And yet I waited a long time to tell Vic. I don't suggest that. I wish I hadn't waited so long. And he's a sensitive Pisces. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I was worried that he would think that I was sort of losing my desire for him, because it really wasn't that. It was, now I had this association of pain with being sexual. Trust me, that does not make you want to do it. So I started seeing specialists. I started doing bioidentical hormone replacement. Then I did regular hormone replacement. Now listen, I am not a doctor in that respect. I am not telling you to do any of those things. I'm just telling you that there are things that you can do. But this is a situation, it is not going to fix itself. And I wish that I had spoken to Vic about it sooner and let him in on it, because of course when I did, He was like, Tara, well, obviously I noticed that something had shifted. I just didn't know why. I didn't know what. I mean, we were still having regular sex, but the way that I was interacting with him was different. So I actually think by not saying anything, quote unquote, trying to spare his feelings, I really probably made it worse and made him more paranoid. He was just wondering, gee, I wonder what is going on. So I wouldn't suggest that. Bringing this back to tip 3 about communicating openly and honestly with what's going on for you, or what you like, what you want, what you would like to try. Because a lot of times we get into these ruts sexually. And even if you're achieving orgasm and your partner is achieving orgasm, but we can get into a rut of like, I do this, you do that, everyone gets off, and okay, then we're kind of done. That is not filled with spark, right? That is not filled with passion. Even though you're still being intimate, there's definitely a way to do it with more sort of panache, let's just say, or maybe with more passion. And I think that as we age, if you have sexual hangups, or if you feel shut down sexually, or if you have unresolved trauma in your childhood or in your background, all of these things can impact how present and how passionate you can be sexually. And what I'm saying is that it's never too late for you to explore this with your person, right? It's going to require you to do some research on your own. In the guide that I'm giving you, just go to terricole.com/guide. I'm going to give you some reflection questions so that you can really start to get a clear snapshot of the way that you are relating to your own sexuality, because that is an important part of this process. So yes, communicate honestly with your partner. That's incredibly important. But a lot of times, before we can do that, we need to really get honest with ourselves about where we are. Here's the thing with sexuality. We don't choose the things that our minds find erotic. We don't get to choose them. They just are there. And I remember being young, I was 19 years old and I was in therapy. And I don't know, whatever sexual fantasy I was having, I thought it definitely meant either that something was definitely wrong with me, right? And I remember going to my therapist and saying, I really think something's wrong with me. And I told her what my sexual fantasy was. And she was like, Terri, no offense, but go on Google and look up top 10 most common sexual fantasies. And there's your fantasy. Like, there's nothing that could be in your mind. Like there's no holds bar when it comes to fantasizing sexually. There's nothing wrong with that. And she's like, it's the people who go out and then do things. If you have something in your mind that you feel like, wow, if I did that in life, I would be a criminal. Well, those are the criminals. But whatever you think about is fair game. Whatever turns you on for whatever reason. And I think that depending on the way that you were raised, it took me years in therapy to sort of embrace my own sexuality and to have fun with it, to want to explore it, to want to allow myself to flourish in that way, because I felt like I have this great partner. I'm in this great marriage. I can talk to him about anything. He's very open. Why am I not sharing the way that I feel or what I like or what I want in a direct way? Of course, we can always guide someone by moving their hand or moving their body a particular way, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about getting okay with your own sexuality. And that also can start with masturbating. If you're not masturbating, and if you're someone who feels shut down sexually, self-sexuality is a really beautiful way of exploring the way that you like to be touched. And the more you know that, the easier it'll be for you to share that with your partner. So, tip number 1, you're going to make time, right? You're going to prioritize intimacy and connection. So that sexual connection and just heart-to-heart connection, doing things that are fun together. Number 2, we're going to find ways to reignite the romance itself in the relationship, thinking of small gestures. What can you do that would surprise or delight your partner, make them feel incredibly desired, loved? And part of keeping the romance alive is also, I read something, this is like about a year ago, where someone said, if you're looking at your person and you're thinking, wow, he looks or she looks hot right now, say it. And I really started being mindful of giving Vic more verbal compliments in that way, romantic, sexual, desirous sort of things, where I would always think it, but I wouldn't say it, like how great he looked in a pair of jeans, or being dressed up. He was going to give a talk and I was like, he looks so hot. Prior to reading that, I mean, I would sometimes say it, but I became much more mindful of being more generous in that way, because here's the thing, it does make you vulnerable, right? It makes you vulnerable to give compliments and to be affectionate, because a lot of times we want that back, right? And I feel like in my own marriage, I get that back tenfold. And, he sort of never stopped being very vocal about how he feels about me as a person and the way I look and whatever the thing is. And I felt like I was sort of being a little bit stingy, even though I was thinking it. So if I'm thinking it, why not say it? And I say that is the same to you. These are things that you can have a conversation about once you feel comfortable with your partner and start normalizing these types of interactions more. And the last thing is communicating openly and honestly, not just about sexual fantasies, but about what you're going through, about how you feel, about your insecurities. Because hopefully the person that you're partnered with, they are your person. And there will never be a safer person to have those conversations with. And again, a lot of times this may mean readjusting your own relationship with yourself first to figure out how are you relating to your own sexuality, because that is the beginning, the middle, and the end of the way that you are relating to your partner. So I would love to hear your thoughts about this topic. I hope that you take some of these tips and reignite your relationship. Don't forget to download the guide at terricole.com/guide. I hope you have an amazing week filled with passion. And as always, take care of you.